start. So let me get going again. So when I was 7, I used to dig through my teacher's trash can when she wasn't looking and take the extra worksheets that she had thrown out. And yes, I do remember one time even going out to the school dumpster. I'd rush home with my treasures and go straight downstairs where I had transformed our playroom into a classroom. I'd make my younger sister play school with me. She'd say, "Emily, we just got home from school. I don't want to do more work." But I was always the teacher, and somehow I often got her to play with me. And even on those days that she didn't, that didn't matter because I would teach my imaginary students, writing on the chalkboard, wearing my mom's high heels, listening to them click on the floor. Way back then, I knew that I wanted to be a teacher, although I may not have known exactly why. I invite you to think for a moment why you chose to get into the field of education. I'm going to assume it wasn't for the grading and report cards, and probably not for that great cafeteria food. I bet it was because you wanted to make a difference and inspire others to make a difference. Today, we're going to look at 3 ways that we can inspire our students to make a positive difference in the world by becoming the best global citizens that they can be. When I taught 4th grade a few years back, one of my students was writing a story about something that had happened earlier that week in our classroom. I was conferencing with her during writer's workshop and asking her to expand upon her lead. I said that it might be a bit confusing to others, to which she replied, "Well, everyone was there when it happened." To which I replied, "But what if someone out in the world was reading your story? They weren't here and wouldn't know what had happened." Amelia then said, "Nobody in the world is reading my story." And she was right. No one in the world was reading her story. She knew that she was writing for a limited audience, her teacher, me, and a few of her peers who just happened to be in her share group. Think of it this way. As an adult, when you get a like on Facebook or +1 on your Google+, a comment on your Instagram, a retweet, how does it make you feel? I can only speak for myself, but I get this pretty good feeling inside. One of empowerment. One that I know that I've been heard and I have a voice. And kids are no different. They will thrive as writers when they have that voice and an authentic audience. So there are a couple ways to do this. One, you can obviously have a class blog and interact with another class blog from somewhere else in the world. However, this can be a bit limiting for students. Whereas individual student blogs allow for greater student voice, engagement, and those authentic connections that we really want. I want to quickly plug one of the greatest tools to save teachers loads of time. I'm a technology integration specialist, so my teachers love this tool. It's called Teacher Dashboard by Hopara. This tool does so many things, but for the purpose of why I'm showing it here, I'm just going to mention one. When I was a classroom teacher, this would have been my best friend. I never really had a solid system for checking to make sure that all of my students had written their blog posts and received comments. I would have to check individual blogs, and there just wasn't a real efficient way of keeping tally. So Teacher Dashboard gives you a bird's eye view into your entire class's blog posts. What this means is you can very quickly see who has or has not posted and how long ago. And equally as exciting is the comment view. So because we always know that we want all of our learners to receive comments because we know that fuels their motivation to write more. So with one quick click, you can glance and see whose blog you need to zip into to write a quality comment for them. As I said, our teachers absolutely love this for how much time it saves them and makes the blogging process that much easier. Take a second to check out these benefits of blogging. The ones that instantly grab me are global connections, social skills, and internet safety. We live in a digital world, and it's essential that kids learn not only how to be safe online, but how to create a positive digital footprint from early on. And the only way that they're really going to learn these skills is by practicing them. Earlier this week, I facilitated a digital citizenship workshop for parents, and I told them how I actually want the students to make mistakes online now while the stakes aren't too high, rather than when they're in high school or university and they forget to log out or they share too much personal information online. So there are quite a variety of blogging platforms out there, but I'm going to showcase Blogger. This is what our students are using from pre-K all the way into middle school. And it's important to keep a few things in mind when setting up the blogs to continue practice being those safe digital citizens. This is something that from grades 3 and up, I actually go into the classes and walk through this process with them so they understand what and why we are even bothering with the settings. Things like making sure that the blog is unlisted so that it's unsearchable. We can still share the link with other classes or experts from around the world, but it's unsearchable. We want to make sure that we allow anyone to comment, because we've had issues in the past where people, grandparents, or whoever had trouble with authentication to comment. But at the same time, we also set up the blog moderation. And in grades 3, we start with the teacher moderating the blog comments, and then they graduate into themselves moderating their comments. And once again, that just gives them that empowerment so that they get to choose which posts they can, which comments they can approve that go on their blog. And then of course we set up the tags so that they can organize their blog posts nicely. So it's just as important, if not more, to take the time to review how students can be safe online while writing on their blog. Things like using first name only, pictures of not just them, pictures of groups. But this is where you definitely need to make sure to talk with your admin and find out what your school is comfortable with and what kinds of forms your parents have signed and that kind of thing. On the first day with devices, our students are given an AUP, acceptable use policy. I've also heard it called an RUA, responsible user agreement, which is a little bit more positive and empowering for kids. We have a school-wide AUP that we have adapted for elementary, upper elementary, but as you can see, it's still pretty verbose for younger grades. So the red block shows the meat of the AUP, how we've broken down the rules into 3 parts: taking care of myself, taking care of others, taking care of this place. And that's actually our saying at our school, so it's really easy for our kids to remember. Something I feel really strongly about is that we don't just hand out the AUP paper to kids to read over, sign, and hand back. I had my upper elementary students mark up the document, highlight words they didn't understand, turn and talk with their partners, even make up skits to illustrate different parts of the AUP, and then the rest of the class had to guess which part they were reenacting. I really wanted the students to internalize the document. And I made sure to tell the kids that I did not want anyone to sign that AUP contract, and I explained what a contract was, right then and there, because it was that important. I wanted them to take it home, go over it with their parents, and really make sure that they were ready to make that commitment. If they didn't think that they were ready and didn't want to sign, that was perfectly fine. But of course, then they weren't allowed to use any devices. So that helped sway them. In order to meet the needs of our lower primary, I took that AUP and modified it to look like this. And then I modified it again for our pre-K and K classes. I believe that if kids are old enough to use a device, then they're old enough to understand the rules, as long as they're simplified for them. And once again, those are the sayings that our school uses starting in pre-K, so our kids are familiar with that. The AUP should be a living, breathing document that is frequently mentioned and revisited. not just by the classroom teacher. It should be part of the school culture. So in the morning announcements, on posters in the hallways, coming from the mouths of admin and counselors, etc. Think of it like this. Your AUP is like the foundation of your house. So it's important to spend the time in the beginning to make sure that it's done right so that you don't have issues later on. Now, as I mentioned before, you will have those issues later on, and that's a good thing because those mistakes are true learning opportunities. So at least when the mistakes are made, you have that AUP to pull out and reference. And then the child can then reflect on where the misjudgment happened and make a plan with your guidance so it doesn't happen again. After you've got your foundation laid, you want the framework. We use Common Sense for that. So Common Sense has a myriad of resources for educators, students, and even parents. And you can actually even get yourself and your school and district certified. One of my favorite parts is the scope and sequence. It's broken down into grade bands. So you can see this is grades K through 2, or by category, you can see at the top, to address a particular topic like online privacy or information literacy or copyright and so on. Currently, I am using Digital Passport with my grades 4 and 5 students, and they absolutely love it. So I'm going to play their video so you can see a little bit more what it's about. So as I said, my students absolutely love that because it's all game-based and they are actually learning something as they go. Here is the new one that has been released just last month from Common Sense. It's called Digital Compass, and it's a choose your own adventure style kind of program that's geared toward middle school students. So I'm just going to show you this one.
Emily, it seems the audio for the videos on these clips.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and then just get back in. And these are linked in the presentation, so you can definitely go back. And when I put my resources into the resource page, then you guys can go and watch those videos. But anyways, these are just great, already done for you, digital citizenship lessons or resources that you can use within your classroom. So in order to maximize your success in giving your students that voice with their blog, you want to make sure that you have formed a partnership with parents. And one way to do that is to provide a family media contract. And every family we know is different and has different rules, which is why I really love these contracts, because they're customizable. So you just go to the link, which is also provided in the resources, and they actually already have them in Spanish as well. So take a look at that. Are there any questions that I need to stop for, Tony, or should I keep going to the second point?
Emily, we did have a question with the teacher dashboard, who that was from. Some people couldn't have read that, so that will be in the resources also. But what was the name of the teacher dashboard?
It's called Hapara.
How is that spelled?
Hapara, and it's linked at the end.
Great, thank you. I'm going to keep looking through to see if there's any other questions. I don't think there were any other ones, but I'll double check.
All right. So the second way that we can build our global citizens is to get connected. So you know when you're on an airplane and in the safety talk, the flight attendant talks about putting on your own oxygen mask before helping your child or the people around you? The same thinking here. In order to help your students gain this authentic audience, to fuel that motivation to write, they need you to help yourself and get connected. I was talking to one of my teachers last week about student blogging, and he told me that he didn't think blogging was transformational. He said that his students write their blog posts and that was about it. It kind of ends there. Sometimes parents see it, but hardly any comments. And I told him that he was exactly right. When blogging is used like that as an online notebook, but still kept private, it's merely substitution in terms of the SAMR model. So this is where it's going to take a little bit more work on the teacher's part in the beginning, but you have to get connected to gain that global audience for your students. And luckily, Google Plus Communities makes that a whole lot easier. So if you are not on Google Plus and Twitter yet, now is the time to get connected. One that I'd like to recommend is Connected Classrooms. They have virtual field trip opportunities, and their page is organized really nicely. So let's say you're a high school Spanish teacher looking to connect with native Spanish speakers in Spain, then it's really easy to go to that high school section or elementary section or whatever it may be. Another is the Student Blogging Network. So in the beginning, when you're trying to gain this authentic audience for your writers, it may feel a little artificial and you may not get a bunch of comments, but you just have to keep at it and use the power of social media and networking. So use your communities, use Twitter, use hashtags. Comments for Kids is a great one by Will Chamberlain. I've linked his site in the resources at the end as well. And also finding authors' Twitter handles is huge. One of our 5th grade students earlier in the year wrote a blog post about one of the books that she had just finished reading, and she enlisted my help. She found on her own the author's Twitter handle and enlisted my help to my Twitter account to help tweet out to the author her blog post, and within hours the author had gone on this little girl's blog and made her day, made her year by leaving a comment. So she was pretty excited and definitely motivated to write more. So Tony now is going to share a little bit more about, first, how to find communities that you might be interested in, and then second, how to choose to read updates from those communities.
Great, and I'm always looking for ones that have to do with what I do in the classroom, and there's a lot out there, and as you can see, these are the ones that I belong with. I really try to mix up some local ones that I know people are in my area, like the Colorado Educators Network and the GEG Colorado, but also some international ones, like the Connected Classroom and a mystery hangout one for those of you who are interested in doing mystery hangouts. Emily and I actually meet monthly with a group of connected educators so that we can learn more from each other and learn more about these sites. It's really helpful, and this can be overwhelming, especially for those of you who might have tried Twitter, and Twitter also can be overwhelming, but you need to start small and find some that are very like-minded individuals that you can connect with, or even start your own community on Google's communities. And Emily, if you can go to that next slide, because I'm in so many, I always go to the notification section. And for this one, I keep my notifications on because it's a smaller group of educators, but for some of those large ones, you may want to only show fewer in your posts or not get notified at all. So you can change those things depending on which size group that you're in. And again, as Emily had said, I think if we want our students to be connected, we really need to connect ourselves. So figure out a way of how you can be connected with educators that are like-minded.
Great, thanks, Tony. So once you're a connected educator, your students are just going to prosper. The classroom walls are going to flatten, the world is going to shrink, and anything becomes possible. Connecting your class with peers on the other side of the world, done. Traveling virtually to Antarctica to see polar bears in action, no problem. Talking with an expert from Africa about wildlife reserves as seen in this picture, or the author from your current read aloud, easy. So now that we've got our kids a voice with their blog and have connected them to peers and experts from around the world, let's do what we set out to do when we chose to become educators. So why is having empathy important? Article after article from magazines like Forbes and Fortune, you'll read how successful companies like Google and Facebook are looking for something different in people that they hire. Not their degrees, but their interpersonal skills, their teamwork, their communication, and empathy. And being empathetic is actually part of design thinking, being able to get into your client's shoes and know what they want. And with our students, particularly of the elementary age, I feel like we have the developmental advantage. We're providing them opportunities to feel empathy for various causes, and people will ignite this passion in them to positively change the world in their own way. An example of this is the Traveling Rhinos project that is run by a teacher out of South Africa. So there are 5 stuffed rhino toys, and they each come with their own journal, that are sent out all over the world to teachers who request them. There's a wiki that's linked in the resources at the end of this presentation with a ton of ideas of things that you could do with your class, including video conferencing with the teacher who started this whole project a few years ago. Zinzi was the rhino that visited one of our 3rd grade classes, and the teacher the students are the ones that just took off with it. They created their own video, which is now on the wiki. They made posters to go up around the school. They visited other classes in the school. They blogged about ways to protect the rhino. And here's a photo of one of our students taking her recess time to teach her peers about keeping rhinos safe. Now, why did she skip her recess to do this? Because the rhinos mattered to her. So through this connection brought on by the project Empathy was developed, and it was made to matter. Take a moment to think about how many newsworthy events happen around the world on a daily basis. Everything from tragedies to wonderful, amazing things. When is it, though, that we stop and really take note of something and let it matter? It's when we already have, or we make a connection to it. I don't know if you've ever played the game Like Me. If you haven't, it's a great community building game to play with your students. But here's how it goes. Raise your hand if you've ever traveled to Costa Rica, like me. So if you have been to Costa Rica, most likely your interest right now is piqued, and you want to know the other people who have just raised their hand. You want to go and talk to them and figure out where they went, or when they went, or what did they do while they were there. And, oh yeah, you have a friend named Juan who lives there, and do you know him, right? This happens all the time, especially with teachers when we go to conferences or whatnot. It's because human beings, it's natural for us. We have this innate desire as human beings to connect and be connected. So another way to allow your kids to feel empathy is by letting them create their life story using Tour Builder. Tour Builder is a Google Earth experiment that's still in beta. It's digital storytelling married with the power of Google Earth. So here's an example of one. This is a fourth grader who has mapped her homes around the world. She can then link this in her blog so that other classes that she's connecting with can go into Street View and see, the house that she grew up in, or see because you can upload videos and pictures. So maybe she's uploaded a video of Chinese New Year dragon dance that she's just celebrated here in Malaysia. And let's say her pen pal, her blog buddy, is able to compare and contrast their life in China or their life in the States with her life story. And this tool can also be used with literature. So if you've never heard of Google Lit Trips, go check those out. And I've also linked those at the end. They're phenomenal. Now they're using Tour Builder. Before they were using KMZ files with Google Earth, and now they're using Tour Builder to map out those various stories so that you, the reader, can have a deeper connection with the characters and the story in general. So another way to map this out is using Google Maps. The nice thing about Google Maps is that you can make them collaborative. So Tour Builder is still not collaborative. However, I feel like Tour Builder has more of the digital storytelling aspect to it. It feels more like a story, especially when you hit present. It kind of comes across as a slideshow, as a story. And the last one here I'm going to show you is Google Cultural Institute. And I'm kind of scared to play it now because I don't know if it's going to play.
Emily, the site is pretty good. The sound isn't coming through again, but the site is pretty good. I wonder if you could just screen share the site.
Okay. Can you see the text? Can you see the movie?
Yes, the movie is coming through.
Okay. So I'll just play just a little bit of it. The music is pretty cool with it. So once again, you should go back and check this out on your own. I'll make sure you have access to all this. But what's really cool is you can go in, and because you can take tours through the museums, and you can zoom really closely into all of those paintings because they're in super high definition. Great resources for different history events throughout time.
And
So
I would
now,
say that
go ahead.
This would be a great one to share for anyone in the room, to share with the librarians in their districts, because as soon as I found it, I had shared it with them, and they believe that they can use it, especially for understanding primary sources. So it's a great source for librarians also.
Yes, definitely. And not only just sharing with your librarians, but I shared it with my art teachers, because often, oftentimes, there we go. We now, global peers can go on these field trips together. You don't need money or buses and all that kind of stuff to get your kids out. You can get them to the most amazing museums in the world for free with just your browser. As I was saying, you can go with your global peers, so through the blogs, they can connect, they can discuss art and history together in a way that wasn't possible before the Google Cultural Institute was around. And ultimately, the goal of this tool is to help us learn more about our world, which helps us to be more empathetic. Also in the resources, I've linked a blog post that describes project-based learning with Google Cultural Institute and Common Core Math. It's geared, I think, for classes, grades 3 through 8. So because, as it mentioned, those paintings are in high definition, you can really zoom in and see every single drop of paint. So in this project, the students have to go to this particular painting, and it's all listed there in the blog post. And they have to estimate how many dots of paints were used in that one little bit that they're looking at. And there's no real answer that they know of, but as we know with Common Core, it's more about the process and the thinking. So then the students zoom way in to see the small area. They count the number of dots in the small area to help them with estimating the total amount. So they're working in teams. And then what I love about this article and what it does is then it goes on to say how you can elevate that learning to the transformational level, once again talking SAMR model here, by collaborating with other classes around the world and developing further conversations. What does that painting mean to you? What does it make you think of? Those kinds of things. So as a recap, here are the 3 ways that you can inspire your students to make a difference. Giving your students a voice, getting connected, and promoting empathy. And before you head out of the session, we wanted to give you all a chance to get connected here. So if you go to this link here, just type it in, and it is case sensitive, so make sure it's a capital U and a capital T. You can go in there and add your details, because one of the most important things when you're connecting is just to start small. As Tony said, it can be really overwhelming when you think, oh my gosh, there's so many, schools around the world, different countries, where do I even begin? So picking, one person from this document that's also in your same, let's say your same division or your same subject matter, and connecting your classes, and then doing something, as Tony mentioned, like a mystery hangout where you have to guess where each other are in the world using yes or no questions. It's really engaging. There are communities where you can find other people, and then you could do things like do read alouds together. So each of the classes, you decide the first week we're going to make sure we're both up to page 50 in our read aloud, and then have the kids share their thinking about, different parts of the book on their blogs, and then connecting your blog with the other classes' blogs. And in the beginning, you will probably want to assign students another student from the other class to comment on their blogs. And so then they have to do at least that one person. Then all that does is ensure that all the students get a comment. But then you have to do this student, but then you get to comment on anyone else, and then hopefully your kids will be motivated. And once they start seeing comments from other people around the world that they don't know, it's just incredible. and you start to slowly grow your PLN from there, because then that teacher will know other people from around the world and so on. Let's see. Oh, good. So we have some people adding in. We have people from Mexico, from the States. Woo! People from St. Louis. That's where I'm from. Awesome. So please, yeah, continue adding your details in there, and feel free to connect with anybody from here. And then as you get connected with the community, go ahead.
And I'd just like to say that I think both Emily and I know that you have to be persistent. If you email, I'll just say Stephen, I email Stephen because I'm going to be teaching high school next year. I'm currently teaching elementary school. But I'll be at an international school, and I'm sure we'll have some Spanish and German speakers, so maybe we'll want to connect our students, and maybe Stephen doesn't email me right back. I'm going to be persistent and say, hey, here's my idea. Sometimes people want to hear your idea before they connect with you. Some people want to know a little bit more about what the commitment's going to be. Do you want, how much is this going to take of my away from my possibly instructional time, although I don't think it replaces instructional time. I think it is still instructional time. So just be persistent and have a clear plan for how you want to connect. So, or ask them how they would like to connect, because I know Emily and I both have done lots of different connections, some short, some long, and all of them are great experiences for our students and well worth the effort.
Definitely. And each of us bring with us our own network as well. I mean, I know just from the last several years that I, met Tony, and then I've worked now in 4 or 5 different international schools, or in 4 or 5 different countries. So, and then those people then have moved to other countries around the world. So let's say you are, who is that? Let's go pick on Stephen again. So he's a Spanish and German teacher. Well, actually, I taught at a school in Guatemala that, where there's native Spanish speakers. So maybe he wants to connect with that class there, or whatever it may be. So that's great. And as Tony said, you have to be persistent. I remember the first, and not just the first few people that I connected with, but people along the way that I found, whether it was in a community or whatnot, the teacher and I maybe just weren't on the same page with things, and the connection never really happened. But then with other people like Tony and our group that we meet monthly, it's amazing. I know that I can count on them for anything. I mean, I emailed Tony just a couple weeks ago and said, can you please, be in this session with me and moderate my session for me? And she was there, no questions asked. So if we don't have any questions, I would just like to thank you for joining us. I hope that you got something out of today. And please, I'm going to now add this session to my page that's linked there on the Edu on Air site, so you can access all of the resources that I have. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your sessions.
Thanks everyone for coming, and if you know others that want to hook up through this Google spreadsheet, feel free to put your name on there and reach out to the rest of us. Don't be afraid to just try to connect and see who you can find.
Bye-bye, thanks.